the Barretta Brothers.
On this episode, I'm joined by Fran Brill. She has her own theme, remember? She's an Emmy-award-winning Muppet performer who created such characters as Sesame Street's Zoe, Prairie Dawn, the Countess, and many, many more. But that's not all. As an actress, Fran has performed on and off Broadway in popular television shows such as Law & Order, The West Wing, and several soap operas, including All My Children and How to Survive a Marriage. Her voice has also been heard in hundreds of radio and TV commercials and the cartoons Doug and Sheep in the City. And it doesn't end there. She's also graced the big screen in many highly regarded films, including Being There, What About Bob, and Midnight Run. She's with me today because she has some wonderful stories to tell, and unlike the long-form interviews we usually do on our show, these mini episodes give our guests the chance to share one favorite memory about each of these very special people. Welcome, Fran.
Oh, hello.
Oh, hi.
I'm sorry, I was just walking by and I heard you say my name, so I thought turn the audio on.
I'm glad you had your camera on in the house and you just
that helped indeed. Indeed.
So what would you like to tell me about Richard Hunt?
Well, I don't know how many people realize this, but Richard and our careers with the Muppets started out at basically the same time. Oh. We were both in this puppeteer training workshop that was held in 1970 because I came to New York with a Broadway show in 1969. Oh. And when that closed, I was running around trying to earn some money and stuff.
Right.
And
which show was it?
That was called Red, White, and Maddox.
That's
it was
right.
A musical satire about Lester Maddox.
Right.
And so I answered this ad in Backstage or Show Business, one of those periodicals, because I thought, hey, they might want to, they might want to hire me on Sesame Street just to do voices, since I knew I could do that sort of stuff, not realizing that this was really going to be a puppeteer job. But once they accepted me into this training program, I thought, well, why not? I'll learn how to puppeteer. That could be fun. I never thought of it as an actual career.
So had you, excuse me, I'm just curious. Yeah. So did you think of the puppeteering on Sesame Street as voices being one thing and performing as being separate? Like a lot of people still do. They don't realize it's all one. Yeah,
absolutely. I have people today who I've even known for a long time, and they said, "Oh, I thought it was a voiceover job," because they knew I did voiceovers. Right. And I said, "Oh, if only, then everybody could do it. How easy that would be." But no. You're responsible for the manipulation, the development of the character, and the voice, which are all interrelated. And of course there is dubbing at times if you have lost your voice or you're playing another puppet in the same scene,
right?
Or a character puppet. But it's multitasking. Mm-hmm. So anyway, this was held on Great Jones Street, which is way downtown in Manhattan. And
sorry to keep interrupting you, but remember, Jones Street is the street that Frank Oz and I both lived on, which is only 1 block long.
Yeah. Which is amazing. And I don't think I've ever been back on that street in all the years that I lived in New York. But I think it was Kermit Love's studio. I'm sure somebody will know. But anyway, all I remember about that was that there were a lot of wannabe puppeteers. And this was the time of hippies, so there were a lot of long-haired guys with beards and everything. And it basically was a 2-week program. And after the first week, they dismissed people, and then if you were good enough or whatever, you lasted through the second week. So Richard was one of those people. Mm-hmm. And he I guess he was 18. Wow. Because I know that's when he got hired. So he was really young. And a lot of the wannabe puppeteers were quite a bit older, I think.
Mhm.
So anyway, even then, or I should say, he always was just an incredibly uninhibited, boisterous. I mean, if you were in a room with Richard, you could never miss him. And obviously he had a knack for this. And I think he was born to be a puppeteer because he was just so good. One of my favorite bits that he did on Sesame Street was, I think, called the London Fog. And it was teaching, words that end with OG. And there was some confusion about bog or fog or log. And he played, I'm not sure what are those fellows in front of Buckingham? I think they're called palace guards. The ones, the beefeaters with the big tall,
right.
Who stand they do this to this day. They stand in front of Buckingham Palace, and they have this old dum dum with their feet and march around. And so he did that with a puppet, and it was just incredible. It was so good. It was so precise. It was so funny. I mean, he also could do any accent right away. Again, I don't know why some of us are able to do this. It's just there. You just let it out. And so he did all that. And it was with Kermit the Frog interviewing him in front of Buckingham Palace. And it's a great bit. I think it's on YouTube, most of these. But, that was really early on when he got on the show. But he was a great performer. He gave a lot, which is wonderful when you're performing with him. And he was just so good. So that's one of the bits that I wanted to mention, that I just think it just is a sublime example of great puppeteering.
I've never heard that story before. I didn't know how you met or where. Yeah.
Yeah. So believe it or not, the two of us came out of that. We made it into week 2, and then we both got cast a few months later into this Ed Sullivan Christmas special called The Great Santa Claus Switch, which starred Art Carney. And Richard and I were Freckles, which were, I don't know, some sort of weird creatures in this thing. And so we did that together. And the other thing that we shared was a complete obsession with Stephen Sondheim. I think we both went to this very early concert, which was in 1973. So I started Sesame Street in 70, as did Richard, actually. And then in 73, Sondheim had already, become pretty famous, though I really saw my first Sondheim show when I was in high school in Philadelphia.
Philadelphia?
As you and I would pronounce it, coming from Delaware County, Pennsylvania. When was that? Oh yeah, I saw Anyone Can Whistle in 1964 in Philadelphia. So when I saw that show, I was like, I don't know, it just completely blew me over. And so I got tickets to this Sondheim a musical tribute in 1973, which I think was at Carnegie Hall. And I know that both of us went to it, but not together. But he was obsessed with Sondheim, and I was too. So we had that in common. And one memory, or the main memory, no, it's just as silly, but when I picture Richard, I picture sitting under the set in between takes, sitting on an apple box, just ready to raise his arm into the shot, reading the New York Times. That's what he did. Well, Richard was just always under the set reading the New York Times.
Did he do the crossword puzzle too?
I don't know. I just saw him reading the New York Times. So that was one thing that stuck.
Were there two characters that you each performed together that you enjoyed most? Where you
That's a
got
nice
to
question.
ping pong back and forth?
Yeah, not really. When we talk about Jerry, absolutely,
Uh-huh.
but not so much. But I'll tell you what, Richard was just irrepressible. He had a huge heart. He was extremely generous. He was larger than life. I mean, Don Music, Placido Flamingo.
Right.
I mean, I just laughed and laughed and laughed at what he did. He was just, and you know what? These characters were just full blown the minute he would do them.
Mhm.
That's not easy, but he just was that gifted. He really was.
Don Music is one of my favorites.
Oh yes, and Prairie. I think I may have stolen from Richard. But Prairie Dawn would also bang her head on the piano. However, it got so bad all this head banging that I know I was asked to stop doing it.
Oh, wow.
Because they thought it wasn't a good example for the kids out there to be banging your head on pianos.
Right.
But it was funny.
Fran Brill, tell me, what do you have to tell me about Caroll Spinney?
Caroll was probably one of the most generous of the performers. He always, always, always had time to talk to anybody who came to the set. I really, really admired him for that. When I began, and this was season 2, Big Bird was, of course, one of the main characters. And then after I I didn't stop doing right hands, but I mean, after they actually gave me a puppet, the first one that they gave me was Little Bird, because they thought that would be a cute idea to have Big Bird and then Little Bird. And I think we both enjoyed doing that together a lot. As I said, he was very generous. He was very flattering. And at one point, and I wish I had it, but I don't know why, when I moved from New York, I lost a box of a lot of things, and which is very sad. But he drew a really lovely ink sketch of Big Bird and Little Bird flying, and I think he just called it Birds of a Feather, and it was just adorable. He was very thoughtful in that way.
He did sketches for a lot of people.
Oh my
Very
gosh.
generous that way.
He was an artist. He was a superb artist. Every Christmas he would draw an original piece, not just draw. I think he used watercolors to with a lot of the characters in it, and he gave them to everybody on Sesame Street. It was like the Sesame Street Christmas card, which was very kind of him. And he gave them to the cast and the crew, and that was his Christmas present. I just wish I'd been talented enough to do something like that.
You have your own talents.
But the other thing about Caroll was that he and his wife were the first people I knew who really traveled. I mean, traveled outside of the United States. And it really sparked my interest in traveling, which I have now done. But every season he would come back talking about where they had been, one more exotic place than another. I believe they owned a home in Hawaii too. And all of this sounded very glamorous to me at the time.
Wow, that's so nice. Fran Brill, what can you tell me? What can you tell me about Jerry Nelson?
Oh, Jerry, the divine Jerry Nelson. I think I probably was paired up with Jerry more than anybody else. I think Jim thought, and he was right, we both were actors really before we became puppeteers. I mean, serious actors. And so we got cast or paired up in so many things. We were the Count and I did not originate the character of the Countess. Camille Bonaro did, but when Camille left Sesame Street, I became the Countess. That goes way, way back. And so we were the Count and the Countess. And what my favorite pairing was he did Uncle Biff, and I did a character called Roxy Marie. And Roxy Marie was this red-haired, stringy red-haired puppet who wore glasses, because I really wanted her to wear glasses because none of the other puppets wore glasses. And she was like a little Catholic schoolgirl. She had a plaid skirt on and, you know, the little white blouse peeking over. And she wore a backpack, a little, is that right? A backpack?
Yeah, backpack.
With her school books in the back. And she was really a creation of mine with the writers and everybody else. I had a very specific person in mind. And she was a very smart little girl, and Uncle Biff was a construction worker. And in fact, he used to be part of Biff and Sully, which was played by Richard Hunt. Two construction workers. And so then Sully disappeared when Richard did. And then they paired me up with Richard and Biff, who was Uncle Biff. And it was just I love doing that so much, because it really showed kindness and understanding and affection. And it was a perfect character for Jerry, because he was a little gruff on the outside, but you knew he adored Roxy Marie, his niece. And, you know, they would solve problems together. And he would say, you know, he would have a problem or a question, and Roxy would explain it to him or correct him in a very gentle way. And I wish I could remember a particular bit, but I don't. You know, she would just, you know, he would say something like, you know, those bees, it's too bad they don't have wings. I mean, that's really stupid. They wouldn't say that, but I'm just
then she would explain it.
And then she would say, well, actually, what was the voice I did? Actually, Uncle Biff. She was something like that. They have wings, and then she would explain it, but again, not in not that she was correcting him, which she was correcting him, but in a very gentle
sharing.
That's it. Yeah. She would share the knowledge that she was getting in school with him, and that I don't know, that just warmed my heart so much. But what I think is so interesting about Jerry is that he had these two completely different lives. He had his Sesame Street life, but then he had this incredible music career up in Truro.
Yeah.
You know, with all these musicians. I mean, he was pretty famous just for performing up there, and had this group of musicians. And I don't know how many people know what an incredible.
Yeah, I don't think people know that side of his life very much at all.
Probably not. But I would say it was really 50-50, you know, because when he wasn't doing Sesame Street, he was performing as a singer and guitarist at all of these different clubs. But primarily, I think there was one specific place that he worked at with his group of guys. And the other thing that I wanted to add about Jerry is that I don't know when he became this incredible environmentalist, but I remember in the early years him emailing all of us with all of these emails about, you know, how bad these oil companies were, or gosh, I wish I could remember one of these companies, but you know, or who was spraying their foods with toxic chemicals that we were now ingesting, and encouraging us to write letters to the company or to a newspaper complaining about these companies. And he was really, really enthusiastic about this.
Consistent with it. Yeah.
Very much so.
Fran Brill. Finally. What can you share with us about Jim Henson?
Oh, well, Jim, it's so hard to talk about him because he's still like a god to me. He was such an extraordinary person. Um, I think Jane Henson said one of the most interesting things about him. She said Jim would have been a good plumber. And what she meant by that was that he was so curious and such a good learner that he honestly could have been anything and would have been successful at anything he tried to do because he would apply himself so well to the trade or the interest that he had.
Mm-hmm.
And Jim was a very restless person. He had so many projects going once Muppets really got going. And it seemed to me that he was always pushing the envelope to see how far the technology could go. I don't think he ever stayed in one place in terms of productivity and looking forward and how can we make this better, which I really admired because I'm sort of a one take, well, that was pretty good, wasn't it, person.
Yeah.
Well, of course, Frank is the leader in doing the most amount of takes possible.
Uh-huh.
But Jim was just he was always searching in his mind, reading. He'd hear about somebody, and he'd read books about them. And I found that, it was very interesting. He did Est. Do you remember Est?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
There was this thing in the 70s, I think, called Est, and
Yeah.
it became all the rage. I never did it because once I heard that, it was a mind stretching thing. And when I heard that he allowed no bathroom breaks the entire day, I decided that I didn't want to do it. But a lot of people I knew took it. I don't know, I sort of felt that it was a scam. Maybe it wasn't. It was pretty expensive. And it was several days of intense sitting there, going through experiences, being lectured by this guy called Werner Erhard. It costs, I think, a couple $100 to participate in this.
But it was like a personal improvement or personal growth kind of a movement, right?
Yes, I believe so. So, the 70s were such a time of navel picking and everything that I think a lot of people said, yeah, I want to take this, or they did it with their boyfriend or girlfriend or husband or wife. It sounded pretty miserable to me.
Mm-hmm.
But, I know Jim did it. And, you wouldn't think of it as him, but this is the kind of person he was. He was always exploring. There was something called Seth Speaks back in those days. He did that too, or read the books. I don't think it was a meetings like Est was.
Right. Yeah, I'm looking it up here where it just says, a real quick answer is Est therapy is concerned with changes, with fixing up and making better. Ext is concerned with transformation. So a lot of self-improvement.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, which is really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But he also, I just remember these incredibly long hours of shooting with Jim because I think it was non-union back in the early days. And it was Jim Henson hours. You just shot and shot and shot and shot until it was done, whether it was 10 o'clock at night or I don't know that we ever shot till 2, but I know we shot late into the night many times. He was always great to me. He always, I felt, knew, he respected the fact that I was an actress first, which is why I got the job. And he respected the fact that I had no experience. So he was very patient with me learning on the job, and I tried to learn as quickly as I could. But he was, there were probably lots of times he probably thought, oh my God, what is this girl doing? I remember kept Prairie Dawn looking like this a few times. Now, I'm
Bending over.
exaggerating. Yeah, right. But he was just a lovely, lovely man, just in so many ways. He treated everybody the same way, no matter if they were, the sanitation guy or the head of the network. And he had incredible patience, and he treated everybody with respect. And we all imitated him, which is why I think when you meet various puppeteers, we all carry Jim Henson in our personalities,
It's so funny. I just like an hour ago, I was talking with my friend Stuart, and this came up. And
A friend?
Yeah, and my one friend, and I said, I think what happens on the Henson set is that everybody involved, first of all, is there to begin with, or has applied or auditioned first because they love Jim to begin with and they know what they're searching for, and secondly because once they're involved they feel an obligation to carry his spirit through everything.
Oh yeah, I think also when you're young and impressionable, as I was 21, you're still, or I was still learning who I was, who I wanted to be, who I emulated. And here was a man who was my boss, who was kind and gentle and soft-spoken and caring and empathetic. And you pick up, I hope, all those attributes, if you have a boss who's nasty to everybody, you're nasty. I always think that it starts right at the top. I used to say that if I would call an advertising agency or something like that, and somebody answered the phone and went, "Hello," I knew that they had a boss who was a son of a gun. And because really, if you're the boss, you don't want everybody is reflecting who the boss is, and it ripples down. So Jim was just a natural leader and a natural father figure in a way, and he led by example. It's not that he said, "Oh, I want you all to be kind to each other." It's just you saw the way he treated everybody. And there's just so much camaraderie. I remember, if you couldn't figure out how to puppeteer something, somebody else would help you out or say, "Here, move your monitor over there and then look over your shoulder." You'll find it much easier to do than trying to get in this awkward position. And it was that the Muppets are a very collaborative group of people. And it's not like, "Oh, I'm going to be the star of this scene." Yeah. It's just let's all make this scene as good as we can be. And that all comes from Jim and Frank, really. It's it was such a wonderful job, which is why nobody ever retires except a couple of us. Because, where do you have a job like that where it's fun and you're around funny people and kind people, and it's really a collaboration. And Jim was really good about hiring people. Very rarely was he wrong. I think he had a really good instinct about people, and if you weren't that kind of person, you were found out and you were bye-bye. Even in the office, you didn't last. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Fran. It's always great to hear these stories from someone who is close to it and has, enough time and experience with the person where that you're getting some accurate information and stories.
All of it, I've made up every single thing I've said.
And you're a good actress too.
And I'm very inventive. Yeah. No, it's a pleasure. This was my family for years and years and years. I will be happy to stay in the family the rest of my life. I love all these people. and I stay in touch with everybody. I like to know what's going on. And it's a lovely thing to revisit once in a while, especially with you, Gene.
Thank you, Fran. Thank you, Fran Brill.
Sometimes with your brother.
Yeah, he's a good supporting
we know
actor.
about Bill. Yeah.
Yeah. And scene.
Scene.